Tonight, we are learning more about Shayla Pierce, the woman whose marshals were there to arrest the morning Christopher Hill was killed.
According to prosecutors, Pierce was wanted by Harrisburg police on illegal weapons, simple assault, and terroristic threats charges. After police arrested Pierce, they encountered Kevin Sturgis, a man who was also wanted for gun charges in Philadelphia. A shootout ensued where Hill and 2 other officers were shot. Sturgis was shot and killed.
But since Thursday, we've been looking into Shayla Pierce's background and how it led to the fugitive task force being at her home that morning. CBS 21's Lara Greenberg is live in the studio with the breaking new details and what she's learned. Lara.
Robin, Jasmine, Shayla Pierce had several criminal charges filed against her in the past 2 years, but the most recent charges were filed last November. And when she appeared in court in December, according to court papers, those November charges were never addressed. Shayla Pierce has a criminal history that dates back to 2012, but the reason police were serving a warrant in her home started back in November 2017. On November 25th, according to a police affidavit, Pierce threatened a neighbor with a gun. Court documents allege Pierce held a gun to a woman's head outside her home on the 1800 block of Mulberry Street and said, quote, "I'll shoot you," after the woman asked Pierce to move her car. Felony terroristic threats charges and several other misdemeanors were filed in that case a week later on December 2nd. The key moment comes 10 days later on December 12th, when Pierce appeared in court for misdemeanor charges from a different case. A transcript of that hearing indicates the hearing only lasted 2 minutes. And according to the transcripts, never during that hearing were the more recent felony terroristic threats, assault, and weapons charges brought up by the prosecutor, Pierce's attorney, or the judge. Those charges are what police and U.S. Marshals say led them to serve a warrant at Pierce's home last Thursday. The question is, when Pierce was in court 37 days before the deadly shooting with an outstanding warrant for her arrest, why wasn't the warrant served then inside the courtroom? And I did get some answers tonight. I got off the phone with the Dauphin County Sheriff shortly before we went on the air. He says the Sheriff's Office, which is in charge of serving warrants, doesn't check warrants out of the magistrate's offices. He says thousands of people come through the Court of Common Pleas every day, and they just don't have the manpower to do those checks. We'll continue following this story. Live in the studio tonight, Lara Greenberg, CBS 21 News.
Tonight we begin with a CBS 21 special investigation into the circumstances of Deputy U.S. Marshal Christopher Hill's death. Could last Thursday's early morning shootout in Harrisburg have been avoided? And that's just one of many questions being asked a week after Hill's death. We're glad you're with us here at 6. I'm Rob Hanrahan.
And I'm Jasmine Brooks. Also being asked, did law enforcement even need to be at Shayla Pierce's house? CBS 21's Lara Greenberg has been digging to get those answers and has the exclusive details. Lara.
Robin, Jasmine, new evidence suggests that law enforcement never should have been sent there in the first place. Law enforcement officials were at Shayla Pierce's house last Thursday to serve a warrant on her when they encountered another man with an open warrant who opened fire on police. According to these court documents, Shayla Pierce appeared in the Dauphin County Court of Common Pleas exactly 2 weeks before the deadly shootout with active warrants against her. But instead of addressing the warrant when she was in court, transcripts say the judge told her, "Have a nice life," and she was released.
Listen, anytime that you hear that there was a warrant that could have been served, that's an awful thing to learn.
But that's what Dauphin County officials are now investigating 1 day after we broke the story that Shayla Pierce appeared in court in the weeks leading up to last week's deadly shooting, but was never arrested while she was in the courthouse. Documents we just received today from the Court of Common Pleas show not 1, but 2 times Shayla Pierce was in court with an active warrant for her arrest and was not arrested. This transcript from January 4th says she appeared in court for misdemeanor charges from a different case. That case was dismissed, and transcripts show the judge told Pierce, quote, "There will be no conviction. The case is dismissed. Have a nice life." Pierce was released that day. The felony terroristic threats charges against her for allegedly holding a gun to a woman's head and threatening to shoot her back in November were never brought up in court. Those charges are what police and U.S. Marshals say led them to serve a warrant at Pierce's home last Thursday.
People make appearances in the courthouse on tens of thousands of occasions, and they check the warrants for county warrants, and apparently this warrant was not among those.
Dauphin County District Attorney Fran Chardo says because the warrant for Pierce came from the Magisterial District Court and not the county court, the Dauphin County Sheriff's Office didn't check it. The sheriff told us yesterday they just don't have the manpower to check warrants out of the district courts. But Fran Chardo says they're already working on a solution.
We take this very, very seriously, and we're reviewing the procedures. I've spoken to the sheriff and to the clerk of courts to see if there are improvements we can make in the system, because we owe it to Chris to make sure that if there are improvements that can be made in the system to avoid future tragedy, that we make them.
Right now, DA Chardo says those improvements will likely mean improving the computer system. No word how long that would take to fix. Live in the studio tonight, Lara Greenberg, CBS 21 News.
We continue to investigate whether the shooting death of Deputy U.S. Marshal Hill could have been avoided altogether.
New tonight, even Shayla Pierce's attorney says what happened at her home 2 weeks ago probably could have been avoided. CBS 21's Lara Greenberg has been following the story from the very beginning. She's now live with new details tonight. Lara.
Robin, Jasmine, this is the first time we're hearing from Shayla Pierce's attorney about why, as court documents show, she appeared in court twice with active warrants for her arrest, but was never arrested inside court. And even her attorney, hired to defend her, says something went wrong. Last week, our CBS 21 investigation broke down how the system failed in the case of Shayla Pierce. Court documents show she appeared in court not once, but twice with active warrants for her arrest, but she was not arrested in court. Now her attorney is speaking out.
I can't tell you what went wrong. Something definitely went wrong, but this situation definitely could have been avoided.
The situation he's talking about is the shooting death of Deputy U.S. Marshal Christopher Hill, which happened when Marshal Hill and other law enforcement officials went to Shayla Pierce's home 2 weeks ago to serve that arrest warrant. Do you have any understanding why those warrants weren't addressed while she was in court previously, right before this happened?
I think we can only speculate as to why that happened, but I don't like to engage in speculation, to be quite frank with you.
Last week, the Dauphin County Sheriff and DA told us the Sheriff's Office checks warrants before suspects appear in court. But they say the Dauphin County Sheriff only checks county-level warrants, not warrants out of district courts. That's where Shayla Pierce's active warrant was. The Dauphin County Sheriff says all parties involved will meet in the next few days to discuss ways they can fix that problem. Over the last few days, we've reached out to the sheriff's offices of Lancaster, York, and Cumberland counties, and each of them told us they do check warrants at both the county and district levels before a suspect appears in court. But Pierce's attorney has at least one other theory.
She did not pull the trigger. The Commonwealth was serving a warrant on her in order to get to the boyfriend and an officer lost his life, and that boyfriend made a decision to pull the trigger.
And despite Pierce's lawyer's claim, law enforcement has repeatedly denied that they were at her home to serve a warrant on Kevin Sturgis. And again, police say Sturgis shot and killed Marshal Hill and was then gunned down by police. We'll continue to dig deeper into this investigation. Live in the studio tonight, Lara Greenberg, CBS 21 News.
A major development about how Deputy U.S. Marshal Christopher Hill was killed.
The newly released investigation headed by the Dauphin County District Attorney's Office says he was killed by friendly fire during a January shootout. CBS 21's Brendan Kinney spoke with the county's top attorney today to hear his reaction to these new findings.
The Dauphin County District Attorney says even after wrapping up the report, he still believes Christopher Hill still died a hero. An investigation into a deadly Harrisburg shootout is closed, but for those who knew Deputy U.S. Marshal Christopher Hill, the healing is just beginning. On January 18th, the Deputy U.S. Marshal died in the line of duty while serving a warrant for Shayla Pierce for domestic threat offenses. According to the report, once police arrested Pierce and secured the first floor, they came across Kevin Sturgis, who yelled, quote, "Are you looking for me?" from the top of the stairs. Police say Sturgis, a convicted felon, opened fire on Hill and his team. Sturgis's first shot hit a task force member in the elbow. In response, another task force member returned fire towards Sturgis, hitting and killing him, which prosecutors ruled Thursday was justified. The report says one of the bullets intended for Sturgis went through a wall, hitting and killing Deputy U.S. Marshal Hill.
That in no way diminishes the fact that Kevin Sturgis precipitated these events. He opened fire on the team that entered lawfully to make this arrest. Sturgis caused his own death and the death of Deputy Marshal Hill.
The U.S. Marshal Service is weighing in on the new development, saying, quote, Deputy Hill made the ultimate sacrifice while executing a lawful arrest warrant on a female suspect wanted for terroristic threats. That fact remains. He died a hero while protecting his community from dangerous criminals. The results of the FBI's review do not diminish the heroic acts of Chris Orr's team. Shayla Pierce remains in custody on the terroristic threats charge as well as a federal detainer. Brendan Kinney, CBS 21 News.
Shayla Pierce pleaded not guilty this morning to charges unrelated to this incident. The warrant for her arrest is what brought law enforcement to her home in Harrisburg that fateful January day. And while the DA says he's looking into changes to the system, U.S. Marshal Martin Payne says he's not second-guessing anything. It's only when a crime is considered violent that U.S. Marshal Martin Payne says the Marshal Service gets involved with arrests.
We're tasked with the responsibility of bringing that person forward. And once that warrant, which was received, I believe the day before was received, we were performing our job.
He's talking about the warrant for Shayla Pierce. She was arrested in January after police arrived at her home and say another man, Kevin Sturgis, was at her house and started shooting at them. That shootout resulted in Deputy U.S. Marshal Christopher Hill being shot and killed in friendly fire.
It's a tragedy that occurred. There's no question about it.
Our investigation found that tragedy could have been avoided. According to court documents, Shayla Pierce was in court several times before that shooting. Each of those times, there were warrants for her arrest, but she was not taken into custody. The Dauphin County Sheriff told us his office, in charge of serving warrants, does not check warrants out of the magistrate's office when suspects appear in county court. Now, District Attorney Franchardo is looking to change that and make the process of checking warrants faster.
We're always looking at, software and, incorporating different databases so we can see, so we can incorporate as much information as we can so that the officer on the scene, so that the court officers have as much information as they can.
No changes so far.
It's an ongoing process, and we're not going to make any snap judgments on anything because of one incident.
U.S. Marshal Payne is also keeping focus on what's ahead and not behind.
The bottom line is it's, in my professional opinion, not appropriate to second-guess decisions that are made.
And Shayla Pierce appeared in court for her arraignment today, pleading not guilty to all charges. We also learned today that the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Middle District of Pennsylvania no longer handling the case. It's been taken over by the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington, D.C. Live in the studio tonight, Lara Greenberg, CBS 21 News.